Welcome to Education in Focus. I'm your host, Eliana Kernodle. Texas A&M President Mark Welsh resigned last week amid controversy over a viral video between a professor and a student debating gender ideology. Joining me to tell us more about this is Center Square's education reporter, Esther Wickham. Esther, can you tell us kind of the background of this situation?
Yeah, thanks, Aliana. So the president of Texas A&M University officially, stepped down, as you said, on Friday, September 19th. It was effective immediately, according to a press release by the university. The Chancellor Glenn Hegar, thanked the president for his service, kind of gave in detail of, the service he had done to the nation, to the university, and how a great of a president he was. But Mark Welsh had resigned after a couple of weeks. In the month of September, when a viral video came out between a professor at Texas A&M and a student debating a gender ideology in the classroom, which ultimately led to the professor asking the student to leave. And so after this kind of huge debacle, a lot of social media fire, a lot of fire on social media igniting, the president decided to step down. He didn't really provide any comment as to specifically why, but it is kind of interesting the timing with all of this.
Yeah, can you get into a little bit more about this professor who was fired and a little bit of the timeline of this? Because if I remember correctly, the the incident happened last school year, but the video came out this school year, and there's been
Yes.
kind of some consequences since then.
Yes, correct. So the professor at Texas A&M, Melissa McColl, she was a teacher in the Department of Arts, specifically education. She was teaching a class on children's literature, specifically, I think, for people that want to be educators for in the future. And last spring, she was talking about uh, children's education, children's literature, and she shared an image of a quote unquote gender unicorn that demonstrated, different concepts of gender expression, identity, sexuality in the book. Specifically, Jude Saves the World, which is a story about a 12-year-old who comes out as non-binary. So they were kind of going through this book and these images talking about sexual orientation, sexual identity for this young child. And a student had raised her hand and asked a few questions, and ultimately in a recording stated that she was uncomfortable with having this conversation. First and foremost, she believes that it was a violation. It went against her religious beliefs to have these kinds of discussions. But ultimately, too, she cited the executive order that had been signed by President Trump, which emphasizes the fact that there are two biological sexes for male and female. And so, at the time in the spring semester, Trump had just started as his second term as president. And so she kind of cites this executive order saying, like, hey, by talking about this in class, you're violating federal law. Like, this is not something that we should be talking about. And also, I don't believe, this is correct in my religious views. After a little bit of a dispute, the professor was like, well, you can just leave if you disagree with this. And the student was asked to leave. And so, after that had happened, there wasn't really any action taken. The student had talked to the administration, nothing really came about it. And then when the fall semester started just a couple of weeks ago, a representative had posted this video on social media on X, and the video just went absolutely viral. And now, in the past couple of weeks, the university has faced heated backlash against the video, saying, that the student was calling out the professor for teaching gender ideology in a classroom, which, as they say, is a violation of federal law. And the teacher, be should be fired. Action should be taken against her. So, State Representative Brian Harris, who's a Republican in Texas, he, reposted the video, as I said, saying, this is against federal law. This is something that, should be taken action for. And later, the professor was fired. Again, she denies any allegations that, this was correct, but according to many press reports, she is currently not teaching at the university.
And this representative has been very vocal, posting different things about this whole situation. What were some of the other things that he had to say?
Yeah, so in response to the video, many lawmakers were saying, this is a violation of the state laws that Texas has passed. Texas has passed DEI bans, transgender indoctrination in public universities, and something that this state representative calls out in one of his ex posts. He says that there is not a single Texas state law that explicitly says that DEI and transgender conversations within the classroom is banned. And so, he's saying that though the governor is tweeting and saying that, this is a violation of the law, there's no state law that they have actually passed, as he claims. And so, even though it is a federal violation since Trump's executive order, this is something that Harrison kind of calls out these lawmakers saying, no, actually, we should have an explicit law that specifically, bans these kinds of quote unquote, indoctrinations in the classroom. Though there's a lot of state laws that talk about, gender ideology, DEI, discrimination, or DEI bans, or what have you. But he's saying, we should have something to explicitly bar teachers from talking about, transgender ideology, indoctrination, or DEI preferences, because, as they said, it violates federal law. So he's kind of calling them out and saying that that's not correct. And after this had all happened, the president has resigned. And before he, put in his resignation, the president of Texas A&M, Mark Welsh, he, talked about how there are certain requirements for teachers to have in their course description. When the video went viral, he came out with a statement, talking about how over the summer, we told this professor to change her course description, make it more clear what are these students expected to talk about, in the classroom. And when the fall came around, this video went viral. They looked at the course description and kind of realized, okay, so these points talking about LGBTQ transgender ideology isn't really specified in the course description. And that's kind of one of the main reasons that led to her firing, because she wasn't, transparent in what the class or the course was going to teach. But another video that went viral that allegedly led to his ultimate resignation was the president met specifically with the student that had this kind of debacle with that professor. And in a audio recording, which was also posted again by the state representative Brian Harris, he says specifically kind of the opposite of what he said publicly, in a statement, saying, these people that are a part of the LGBTQ community, the transgender community, are going to always be a part of society. They are going to be your clients one day. They are citizens that you are potentially going to serve, and you have to understand them, and you have to, understand the issues that are affecting these people and how you're going to treat them. And that, starts in the classroom. And so he says there are professional reasons to teach some of these courses, as he says in the audio recording. And so obviously this kind of goes against his previous statement saying, we think that this is against federal law. These course descriptions have to explicitly say if you're going to teach these things, and we shouldn't teach these things in the schools. But then kind of going back and saying, defending, inclusion of LGBT content. And so, this is something that obviously went viral, a lot of backlash, and now the president has stepped down.
And what did the university as a whole have to say about him stepping down?
Yeah, so after it was announced that he was resigning, there were multiple, different statements and comments from people in leadership at Texas A&M. One specifically, as I previously mentioned before, the chancellor at Texas A&M, Glenn Hegar, kind of talked about how the President Welsh was a man, or is a man of honor, who has led Texas A&M with selfless dedication. As we can see, these department heads are definitely sad to see him go, and they believe that he has done great work within the school.
Well, Esther, thank you for your insights on this story. You can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com.